Hey there, it's Brooks with Grace Cart, and in this episode, we're going to share 3 tips that you can implement to help your curbside pickup day run stress-free. So the only reason why we feel qualified to talk about this is because we've operated a curbside pickup program for 15 years at Seven Sons. And throughout that time, leading up to the pickup day and on the pickup day, anything that could go wrong, we've had go wrong. So from sending customers home with the wrong boxes to operating a pickup in a ice storm with customers waiting in line, you name it, it's happened. But what we've been able to do is through that time, we've been able to learn, implement systems, procedures, SOPs, and technology to where we've been able to dramatically streamline our pickup days and significantly reduce errors. So as always, I'm joined with my brother Blaine, CEO of Seven Sons, and what we're gonna do is we're just gonna pull the curtain back behind that system that we use to manage our curbside pickup days. That way you can take some of those insights and lessons learned to implement them for your operation. And if you're new to the show, be sure if you enjoy the episode to subscribe because we drop content like this every other week. And with that out of the way, we'll go ahead and dive into the episode. You're listening to Grace Cast, a show that shares the secrets to selling perishable food products online. The show and advice is brought to you by the team at Seven Sons, which is an 8-figure e-commerce business that started completely from scratch. Each episode, we bring you one topic, 3 strategies, and 1 tangible resource to continue your learning and put you on the fast track in your own e-commerce journey. Let's begin. So operating a curbside pickup location where you're taking pre-orders and you're meeting all these customers at a central location at a certain date, maybe in an unmarked vehicle, the whole thing's a little unconventional.
Yes.
And
yeah, if you're starting off, usually you have kind of an unmarked vehicle. I know a lot of farms that start off with minivans, which we did too. Okay.
So how do you want to make this feel more professional, run smoothly, stress-free for you and your customer, and not appear like a drug deal on the street corner?
Exactly. I remember the cop that showed up after one of our deliveries.
Yes.
Hey, somebody called. Unmarked vehicle, unmarked box is getting transferred from a truck to all these cars and trucks.
Right. So you want to make your delivery day delightful because this is really important because you got to remember that all this work that you put into raising the quality product that you provide and how much your customer values that, it can all be ruined with a stressful, unprofessional delivery experience because that's when you're finally having that face-to-face interaction with the customer. It's a moment
of magic. It's a moment of truth.
Things become real at that point for you, and your customer as well. So if you treat your customers like kings and queens at the pickup and it's a delightful experience, that's what's going to inspire them to come back, and that's how you're going to build a business that's with a loyal customer base versus a business that's churning customers over and over again.
It just makes it so much more fun too to have the confidence. You know this pickup's going to go well. You've built in contingency plans, all those types of things. So, Brooks, do you want to talk about some horror stories we've had?
I was going to say.
We'll talk about very not fun experiences.
Yeah, so these are all just reasons why you should pay attention to this episode. Take some of these lessons learned. We've been running pickup locations for, how many years? Close to 15 or so.
Yes.
Probably from when we started out, that first one in the family van.
Oh, yeah.
To today. And there's going to be some insights you're going to pick up on this. And we want to help you avoid some of these hard lessons learned and horror stories.
I'll never forget, Brooks. It was Munster, Indiana. It was a new pickup location for us. We were so excited because it exploded very early, and we had 60 customers coming to pick up their orders at that location. We were so excited. It was right before Thanksgiving. We got there, and literally an ice storm develops, and it's raining. It's freezing rain coming down in the middle of this parking lot. And of course, we didn't have time slots, things you're going to talk about here today, I'm sure, Brooks. So everyone showed up, 60 customers at the same time. They all stood in line in a ice storm. And, this ice is raining into our truck. We're slipping around. Yeah, it was a chaotic disaster. And we weren't organized either, so it was taking a long time for each customer. I don't know where your other box is. We're searching around everywhere, panicking. Nasty experience. I can remember the times where, a stack of 20 papers blows off the table all over the cul-de-sac.
And you and your customers are chasing down all the invoices.
What a joke.
And if that doesn't convince you to listen more on this episode, I know this final one will. What happens when you get to the pickup? You have, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 customers who are going to show up in 10 minutes, and your first customer shows up early. So you open the back of the truck. My pallet's not here. Where's the product?
A pallet got missed.
It's the number
An entire pallet got missed on one of our deliveries.
It was the third stop of the day, so they did have some product in there, and
you just didn't notice that the first pallet
it was
loaded.
dwindling down.
It was you were missing that first pallet. It seems like, how could you do that? Well, when you're doing hundreds of stops per year, I mean, things can happen if you're not organized. You don't have the operations, the checks and balances. Okay, here's our checklist before we leave. Believe it or not, our checklist included, do you have all the pallets? Because what do you do the next 10 minutes? You have 20 customers showing up, and you don't have their order.
This is a poor experience. Your customers are taking time out of their day. They're busy people.
Yes.
I mean, we had to send another van out on the road, tell the customers, come back an hour and a half later, we'll be there with the pallet. And nothing makes you feel more unprofessional than this. So that's the title of this episode, is 3 tips to keep pickup day stress-free and delightful for your customers.
Or just how to avoid the stupid things we did on our first 10 years.
That might be a more accurate title to this. So tip number 1 is to create a plan 3 to 4 days in advance for your delivery route before it goes out. So we tell people that the perfect delivery experience happens 3 days before the pickup.
Right. Things start going into motion. So what are those things that start happening that we do?
Right. It's the whole idea. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Right. So some of the examples of some of the things that we're doing ahead of time to make sure that the pickup runs smoothly. Step number 1, once the order deadline closes, we have all of our orders in. Actually, before that happens, we send an email to all of our customers to remind them to place their orders. And that actually helps keep things stress-free for us, because we're not dealing with people emailing in, hey, I forgot to place my order.
When you're throwing on last minute orders, it just starts creating a process of chaos.
Yeah, and it's more likely that you're going to make mistakes because you're now having to pack an order outside of the normal process. So you're more likely to either forget it entirely. I can't tell you how many times we forgot the late orders that came through.
Yep, they added them on. Yep, we'll go ahead and do it, and it gets put in a stack. Miss the stack, miss the truck.
So deadline reminder sends out, I think it's a day before the deadline actually occurs, reminding customers to place their order. Then at that point, once we've passed through the deadline, we're going to count all the orders that we've received for every single location, and we're going to start planning our pickup times and our routes. So this is something that we actually plan after we know exactly how many orders we have, because what we'll do is we'll actually plan different time slots for certain locations if we have more than 20 or so or 15 or so customers who are picking up at that time.
Yes.
Because that helps you avoid those bottlenecks that Blaine was talking about
60
earlier.
customers standing out in the freezing rain all at the same time. Why do you need 60 customers showing up at the same time? Or for that matter, you don't need 30 showing up at the same time.
No, it creates a poor experience. Your customers are having to wait. You're more likely to miss something because you're having to work through things faster. So what we would actually do is we'd create these time slots based off of the customer's last name. So if your last name is from A to M, in those letters, so it falls between those letters, hey, you show up at 2:30. Yeah. If it's the latter part of those letters, then you show up at 3 o'clock. So we create these little 30-minute, sometimes 20-minute time windows. It really just depends how many customers you're dealing with.
And the important thing here, Brooks, is they always change. This wasn't static for that pickup location, meaning A to M always comes at this time. No, we tailored the alpha amount of time in those time slots based on that particular delivery, because it wasn't uncommon for us, especially you get into Thanksgiving, a pickup location that usually only had 30 orders, all of a sudden has 60. So you had to adjust for that. And maybe you're going to cover this, we always build in extra time. We would rather us or our driver, have to wait an extra 10 minutes for that next slot of pickups to start, rather than to have things too bunched and rushed. We want it to be a relaxing experience.
So if it's the same every single time, then that's where you're going to just have a higher risk of running into those scenarios where everyone shows up at once. Divide out the time slots, change it. And then what we do is we email customers before the delivery a pickup reminder, reminding them to show up to the pickup, which is something that can be a problem with pickups as well. You have your no-shows, then that's added cost for you to have to reschedule things. It's inconvenient for the customer. So we're reminding them to pick up, and that's where we're communicating their pickup time slot. So we have a consistent time slot that we're communicating beforehand. So like it's a range of the time for the pickup.
Yeah, we at least give them a range.
Yeah, so that way they know how to plan their day in advance. But then once we're leading, day, 2 days or a day before the pickup, we're giving them that final time slot.
And I'm pretty sure in that confirmation email it says these times are subject to slight changes based on volume.
The original confirmation email
the original.
they get when they
but
place the
then
order.
you send that final reminder email that says these are your exact times. This is when you should show up.
So the fulfillment process actually plays into running a smooth pickup as well.
Yes.
So one thing that we're doing when we're fulfilling these orders is we're making sure that when we load the orders onto the pallet and as they go into the vehicle, they're in the same order alphabetically that the customers are going to show up in those time slots. That way, if a customer shows up with the last name of Z and it's at the bottom of your pallet, you don't have to go digging through this entire pallet inside the delivery vehicle.
Or maybe a better example, A. If we started with A, you don't want to have to go dig through the last order in the stack.
Correct.
And then you're just set up for chaos because your whole van or your truck is a mess at that point.
So A is right at the top, and as customers show up, if everything works perfectly, you start to work your way
as
through
our
the
pickup
pallet.
locations got busy and there's a lot of product on the truck, if we did have an early bird customer that showed up and we knew that their order was most likely absolutely buried, we would sometimes say, hey, your order's on the very bottom. We need to get through some of these early. If they showed up an hour early, sometimes we just had to tell them, just give us a moment to get prepared before we start digging for your order.
Yeah, because again, that's just going to set you up for potential disaster later on.
I'd rather have that customer have to wait an extra 10 minutes, that one customer, rather than destroy create an unorganized mess, and then my first 10 customers start showing up and I'm not ready for them.
So this is really easy to do. If you're a Grace Cart client listening to this, just a quick tip for you. Before we print out our packing list, we just click on the customer's name, which automatically sorts all the packing lists from A to Z. We print them out, so then we just fulfill them in that order. They get stacked on that order on the pallet, and then the driver takes them off on that order when he's out there on delivery experience. So sequencing, it's a very simple thing to do, but if you do it right, it really makes things much easier for the driver when he's on the road.
And I know one thing we did too, Brooks, as we got more room in the truck, towards the middle part of the day, we would go ahead, if we showed up at the pickup location early, which we always plan for that, you'll probably touch on that, but we would go ahead and stage some of the orders and group all the boxes together for the same customers with the extra space we had in the truck at that point, and that really helped things run smooth.
And it's really important too, through that fulfillment process, make sure you're doing the basic stuff like writing on every single box how many boxes each customers have, so you're less likely to forget one on the truck. Tip number 2, so tip number 1 was to make that plan 3 to 4 days in advance.
Start putting things into motion.
Number 2 is to more planning. Create a contingency plan for those times.
The missing pallet.
Well, what happens? When things go wrong, what do you do? So having a plan for those is going to help. Create magical moments for your customers. It makes things less stressful for the driver who's out on the road. So a couple of practical things. You already mentioned one. We plan at least 30 to 45 minute buffer of leeway time between every single pickup location. So if the truck's going out on the road, it's going to make 4 stops. Between stop 1 and 2, there's a 30 to 40 minute buffer of downtime.
In addition to travel time. So you look at the travel time and say, I'm going to need this much travel time, and now I'm going to go ahead and add 30 to 45
Literally,
minutes.
it's in there just in case something goes wrong.
And Brooke, sometimes it was up to an hour. If we're going from Columbus, Ohio to Dayton, that's already, an hour drive. We might add an extra hour of buffer so that if we get out of Columbus 30 minutes late, we still get into Dayton 30 minutes early.
Or if it's the first stop of the day, because you have more travel time getting to that first location. If it's 2 or 3 hours away, plan at least an hour in there.
So more buffers earlier in the day.
Because it's more likely you're going to hit traffic when you're traveling that far.
If you don't do this, you get an hour behind at the first stop because you had a flat tire. It just is a domino effect, and the rest of the day for every other customer after that goes poorly.
I can't stress this enough. It's basically, you want to look at this as like, you show up to the airport. Everyone knows you show up to the airport an hour and a half, 2 hours early, whatever that is. It's just a given. You do it. The TSA security knows. Everyone does this. You have to do that because if things go wrong, you miss the flight. You need to think about this the exact same way. You have to plan this buffer time in here because things will go wrong.
I can't tell how many flat tires we've had. We've broke a hitch on our truck pulling a trailer, and we had to go buy a new hitch, and still made it to our pickup location on time. I mean, we literally snapped the hitch going down I-55 in Chicago. It was a good thing the safety chains were on.
That's what's great about this is there's countless stories of things going wrong.
Yes.
And yet the customers never knew.
They never knew about that
stress. You show up a little
we
sweaty.
Had a trailer parked on I-55 North in Chicago with no truck attached to it, full of meat. They never knew all that happened.
Like, we're fine, guys.
We're traumatized. We almost created a wreck.
Everything is okay. All right, so some other stuff, rain gear. Make sure you always have the rain gear for poor weather. We always would send our drivers with 2 umbrellas, so that way they could have one to where they could give it to the club leader. That way, they could hold it over them as they're carrying boxes to the customer's car. Same thing if the customer's going to get out. That way you have something to pass to the customer.
We always carried a little canopy tent too as well, just in case. Now, if it was going to be a downpour, some of those canopy tents can just get you got
to get weights for the tents. Yeah.
But if you just have that nasty little drizzle, a little tent having that on the truck and setting that up makes the delivery experience so much better. That someone can stand under the table and you keep the boxes dry and everything else.
The last contingency plan I wanted to highlight here was, so what happens when there's a mistake with the customer's order on the road and that's discovered? So they were missing an item, say they checked it in at the delivery, they didn't get their eggs or whatever it is. And then, you're powerless to solve it there, right? Yes. And it creates a poor experience. Maybe you missed their order altogether, you know?
Right.
And they took time out of their day. They've been planning around this for 6 weeks in advance. That's a very poor experience. So what are you doing in those type of situations? So something we've always done is we would send our drivers with an extra case of eggs. Yeah. Okay. And it's a lot of times our drivers, you want to know on the road without looking into it. Hey, was this actually our problem? The customer just forget. But either way, we told them you have the power. If something goes wrong on the delivery, a customer's upset about something, give them a dozen eggs or 2. And tell them that some will be back in touch on Monday. We will make sure that we make this right for you. But for now, take these 2 dozen eggs for the inconvenience. And that just turned this moment of misery into a moment of magic. And I know we've used this examples for other episodes in the past, but it's key to make sure that when those things go wrong for the customer, that you're doing something to make it right away on the spot.
One of the other things that we do with Grace Cart, and we built this into Grace Cart, was the ability to go into your order index page and quickly filter for a specific location. And then there's this group send a bulk email to just those customers with those orders, so that if your truck did get behind, you could quickly, either on the road or someone back at home at the farm, could email those customers like that. The right customers, email them a message, hey, sorry, truck's behind 30 minutes. Just wanted to get
which is great, because if you don't have that type of technology, then what do? You email your entire email list when this only affected a handful of customers. You don't want your whole list to know that, we're late to the pickup.
Yes.
Or
when we forgot the pallet, that pallet got missed, Brooks. I mean, we
forgot the pallet.
We knew exactly what the first step was. Somebody gets on Grace Cart, pulls up those customers, and sends just a 2-liner email that explains it. But the key was we could quickly communicate, and we were able to get a hold of a lot of customers that never showed up at that original time, even though we only had 10 or 20 minutes to interject. So that's just part of what we build in those capabilities with Grace Cart for that.
So the third tip here is actually, it has 2 benefits. Not only does it help keep pickup day stress-free, but it actually helps save you a lot of costs as well. So I call it the single driver rule. So the whole idea is if you can't confidently send one driver out on the road to manage the pickup day, then it's too complex and you have things that you need to streamline.
Yeah.
So we tried to make it a goal to always send out our truck with just one driver. Makes things so simple that just one person on the road could handle everything.
Yep.
So not only did that save us costs, but it forced us to just streamline things enough to make sure that we're less likely to make mistakes, less likely that things would come up that would take more of that person's time.
At one time, Brooks, we were actually assembling parts of the order literally at the pickup location.
We were doing fulfillment at pickup.
Yeah, because we'd print a report that said, okay, we need all these items on the truck. We'll put them in these areas, have it organized. As customers show up, okay, we'll get them their bag of beef. We'll get them their pork items, and then their eggs, and we'd start assembling and combining. That was a disaster.
So some of the things that really helped us out were the pickup time slots. So that allowed us to avoid the crowd. So one person should just have a nice flow of customers and never get overwhelmed. We also started having customers, we would try to our best to tell them to, hey, check in your orders at home, because a lot of times customers wanted to make sure everything was there on the spot, but there's nothing that we could do, on the road. So we would communicate, hey, check in the order at home. We would actually communicate that in the pickup reminder email that we'd send out to them. And if anything's wrong, make sure you have all of your items.
Because I remember there's nothing worse than you've got maybe 3 or even 5 customers standing in line, and then someone comes back and says, hey, I just opened my order, I'm missing 2 chicken wings. And you can't do anything about it on the spot.
Yep.
So we really highly encourage in the confirmation emails, here's what you do. Show up, and then the last step was check in your order at home. And that's why it's important to have enough trust with your customers that if anything is not right or if you're missing anything, we will make it right.
Right, because they feel like they have to make it known there while they're on the spot. So,
Yes.
And then having those free dozen eggs then too, that was a way to actually really, take care of that situation very quickly.
Then the customers that are watching and seeing it, by example, they're seeing how we took care of that customer. That customer walked away with a smile on their face. So
probably the biggest thing that streamlined pickup day for us, though, was the decision to take credit card payments only in advance. So that way when the truck left out on the road, it was leaving with product that was all paid for. We weren't having to deal with paper invoices anymore that could blow around in the wind and have the whole,
I don't know how many people would show up also at the pickup location because they made the order online. They're so used to paying for it when they order online. They would show up and say, no, it's paid for. Like, there's no way you can pay for it. But at that time, we didn't even take credit card at that point. And we're like, no, it's not paid for. Like, no, I paid for it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Over and over again. No, you haven't. We haven't got the money for this. But I placed it online. I paid for it.
Exactly.
Yep. And they just didn't remember that this was how the system works. So,
and I remember the days of hauling around $10,000 to $15,000 in cold hard cash throughout Chicago in the truck.
Yeah.
That's the liability.
Not a good idea.
No, not a good idea.
Yeah. So everyone wants to avoid the processing fee, but believe me, the processing fee, it pays for itself when streamlining the time, being able to just send out one driver at delivery.
Customers will order more. It's just...
Yeah, because the whole process before, we had to set up a table, had all the invoices, customer gave us their name, then we'd find their invoice, they'd write the check, so then they got to write the check.
Either need to rely upon the club leader to help with that or send a second person if the club leader wasn't going to be there.
Not to mention the administrative hassle it was on the back end too. So then we had to keep all the checks and the cash organized to the people who paid for them, and we had to make sure we received them in our accounting system to make sure all those things check out.
I'll never forget about the guy, Brooks. I remember distinctly loading $700 worth of product into his car just for 2 days later to go to deposit his check, and it was a fake check. I remember. I loaded it for him. I put it in his trunk. Anyways.
Yeah. So the processing fee, it pays for itself. The product leaves paid for, and it really streamlines things. This was probably the biggest factor that allowed us to get down to just one driver going out on the road.
And going paperless altogether. Although, I don't know if you want to talk about the delivery manager that we built for the drivers to use with an iPad. That also was kind of a revolution for us. As well.
Because we still wanted a way to, when the driver's at their pickup, they know who all the customers are that are coming to pick up and make sure that everyone came before they leave and go to the next stop. So all of that, you still either need paper for either packing list or something to reference that. So what we did instead to get rid of the paper is we created this module for GraceCart that was basically a streamlined version of the backend system for managing orders. And it was built to where you could use it on a tablet, so everything was bigger.
Touchscreen.
Yep, touchscreens. Drivers could check off orders as customers arrived. They could make notes on customers' orders.
They could flag the order so that they don't have to worry about keeping notes around the truck and sticky notes.
So it was super helpful. So something goes wrong and someone needs to follow up with the customer, make things right on Monday. They would just flag the order, make a quick note, customer did not receive this item. And then someone in our office there on Monday, they just quickly search for all the flagged orders and follow up with all those customers. And it's operationalized. It's just a system. We didn't have to communicate with the driver. It was all just handled through technology. So that allowed us to get rid of the paperwork as well.
We could even update the credit cards that were on file right from that iPad, which once in a while, you would go to charge a card before you went to make the delivery. So back in the office, you would charge that card. Yep. Sometimes it wouldn't go through, either that the card expired, what have you. And so by the time the customer shows up, the driver can say, hey, your card didn't go through. Do you have a different card we can add to that? And that was, it didn't happen often, but when it happened, you needed that ability for the
driver could do it on the road. So that entire module, we call it the pickup manager now. And we'd used it for years and streamlined it for years for our business. It's something we've just released to the Gracecart platform as well. So if you're interested in that module, go ahead. We'll leave a link to that actually at the bottom of wherever this is posted. So go ahead and check that out if you're a Gracecart client. But otherwise, those are the 3 tips. Start planning and getting things in motion 3 to 4 days in advance. Have a contingency plan for the things that will go wrong, because they will go wrong. And then follow that single driver rule, because it's going to force you to streamline things and help make sure you got systems in place to where you're less likely to make mistakes.
Do these things and you will have a smooth delivery experience more often than not, obviously.